And now joining us for an all-out preview of the PBA Governors Cup semifinals is none other than our basketball analyst, Juan Banal. Juan, good morning.
Good morning, Andre. Morning, everybody.
Here we go, 1B, best of fives series semifinals. Exciting one. Magnolia, Meralco, Ginebra, and NLEX. Apat na lang. Are these the four teams that you expected to see in the semifinals of the Governors Cup?
The quarterfinals was very unpredictable. You know, even if teams had twice to beat advantages. But if you look at the final four teams that made it to the semifinals, 3 out of the 4 were actually the top seeded teams in the eliminations. You had Magnolia, who was had the top seed, and then Meralco was 4th seed. NLEX was the 2nd seed. It was Barangay Ginebra who was ranked as 6th in the quarterfinals, who kind of beat, had that upset against TNT with a twice to beat advantage. They were the ones, but then again, you can't count out Ginebra. They are the defending champions of this conference,
right.
And they're just not gonna go down quietly. And that never say die came out at the right moment.
Well, 1B first game today will be between Meralco and Magnolia. Early in the conference, they were the top 2 teams in the standings, with the Bolts going 4-0 before losing to Northport, and then the Hotshots going 6-0 also before suffering their first defeat against Northport as well. And when these two teams collided, went head-to-head noong March 2, it was a very close fight, as expected. And with Magnolia winning by just 3 points. Pero syempre, factor in natin, wala sina Calvin Abueva, si Ian Sanggalang that time. Now that they are back, fully healthy itong Hotshots, which team do you see having the edge here in this exciting best of 5 semis between Meralco and Magnolia?
Well, they did say they were both quoted. Both coaches were quoted saying it's going to be a grinded out basketball. It's bubugan, in other words. And interestingly enough, in that matchup, when they met each other in the eliminations, for the first 3 quarters, Meralco was actually leading and dictating the game, only to turn the tide in the 4th quarter. As they ended the 3rd quarter, itong Magnolia started taking on the lead, and then Magnolia was just trying to play catch up. But it was a very close matchup at the entire ball game. But if we were to highlight specific stat lines, if you see the rebounding category, Magnolia and Meralco both were able to get 45 rebounds, but points in the paint, second chance points as well, that was completely dominated by Magnolia. Points in the paint, 46-26. And second chance points, 19 in favor of Magnolia versus the 11. In other words, Magnolia had a field day in the shaded area. But we also would like to note the bench scoring advantage that Meralco had in that ball game, led by Alain Maliksi, who had 13 points in that ball game. Meralco had that advantage. They had 25 bench points versus the 16 of Magnolia. So, it's going to be tricky. The imports tend to match up against each other, but the locals will have difficulty playing against these imports. And now that Magnolia has a deeper bench, with Calvin coming back and Ian is already there, it's going to be a tricky part. Magnolia is the top seeded team, but Meralco is somebody who's so used to the Governors Cup as well. So Coach Norman Black, I think, is pretty confident that they will fare against Magnolia, and you do expect a very close and tight matchup. Hopefully we see a game 5, between these two teams, and it's going to be legendary.
Well, ang may ayaw lang makakita ng Game 5, either si Coach Norman Black or si Coach Chito Victorero. They want to end it as soon as possible, but for us, the analysts, the fans, and everybody else watching from the outside, we want to see these two teams battle till the end. Well, Ian Sanggalang has been back for a while para sa Magnolia. Si Calvin Abueva, kakabalik lang ni The Beast. He saw action during Magnolia's quarterfinal game against Phoenix. We will see right now on our screens his numbers here against the Fuel Masters. 12 points for the Beast, 8 coming from the free throw line. Perfect pa nga siya from the charity stripe here. Tas makikita natin, he grabbed 9 rebounds, dished out 4 assists in almost 19 minutes off the bench for against Phoenix. Pero 2 of 6 lang from the field, 33%. Pag-usapan natin yung importance of having a Calvin Abueva for Magnolia in the semi-series against Meralco. Aside from the numbers, diba? What else, what kind of impact will you see from having a Calvin Abueva out there on the floor?
we're talking about the best player of the conference in the previous conference. And so that has to mean something, and that has to have weight. Obviously, it was his, these are initial games, and he's trying to get back in the groove. Hence the numbers, but just having a Calvin Abueva, you did use the word impact, and no matter what happens, he has that effect. He has an impact one way or the other in any game that he plays, and the unpredictability of having a Calvin Abueva in the lineup. You don't know if he's going to get the rebound, he's going to run the floor, or he's going to pull up in a three-point line. It's just that. He can break down the defense, and he's going to keep Meralco guessing. That's the beauty of having a Calvin Abueva, his unpredictability. Obviously, his ability to go and put the ball on the floor and then kick out, that's going to open up a lot of shooters. People rarely talk about Calvin Abueva's ability to find the open man and to create for his teammates. I think it's very rarely mentioned. We always talk about his energy, we talk about his rebounding, we talk about his taunting, but we don't talk about his ability to create plays. And I think that's something that Magnolia will really benefit from and will hurt Meralco, because they have to now read how Calvin Abueva plays when he's on the floor and how Magnolia behaves when he's not on the floor.
He's a type of player where every team would want and would need, where he does everything on the floor. Like what you said, it may not show on the number side, but he just gives his 110% on the floor. He impacts that offensive side, defensive side, everything he does. He's just a really huge factor here for the hot shot.
I think he's a beast. I think he's a beast.
You think so? Oh, that's why he is called the beast. Ito naman, Juan, pag-usapan natin. Ako, na-excite ako dito sa import matchup na to. Tony Bishop for Meralco, Mike Harris for Magnolia. Anong dapat abangan ng fans dito? Kasi for me, it will be a really good matchup between two really solid imports. As we take a look at their head-to-head numbers-wise, both played 11 games for their respective teams this conference.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, both playing 11 games, so they're one of those imports that kind of stayed longer in their respective teams. If you look at their average, the points are very similar, very close. The field goal also 11.1 for Tony Bishop, and then Mike Harris is around 11.6. That's 54%, 49% to the other side. Rebounding is identical. But then when you look at the assist, though, that's where Tony Bishop is kind of like, he sets himself apart from Mike Harris because of the style of play. Tony Bishop is very good at putting the ball on the floor and penetrating. He's got that outside shooting. Mike Harris is your legitimate big guy. He likes playing the perimeter, but it's all medium range jumpers. He can post up to the body. And so it's the matchup. When they faced each other, in the eliminations, they were matched up against each other, but they actually had locals who played different positions to match up against them. You got Magnolia tried playing Rafi Rivas against Tony Bishop. All he did was read the defense well, and then started driving and penetrating. But Mike Harris is also going to be a problem. Who are you going to put against a Mike Harris? Are you going to put Raymond Almazan? Is it going to be Rainiel Hugnatan? Is Cliff Hodge too small for this guy? And in that matchup, Mike Harris had a better performance than Tony Bishop. Mike Harris had, I think, 30 points and 22 rebounds. Bishop had 19 points and 14 boards. But it was really the locals that Tony Bishop was able to help from the Meralco end. So they play differently. It's exciting to see how the locals are actually going to match up and how the team will play against these specific imports.
Well, Juan, your keys to winning the best of 5 semi-series starting with Meralco.
I would say the notes that I have really is baby limit the second chance opportunities. You know that you're going to have a bigger headache with Calvin Abueva now on the floor and Ian Sangalang also there. So obviously what they've already dominated in the first matchup, first time that you met, will be something that will be reinforced with the addition of these two players. So being able to really, gang rebound, get even your guards to rebound, secure that rebound first before you even push for your offense. You have to understand, Magnolia surprisingly, is the top offensive team in this conference. They're usually known for their defense,
yeah.
but they're averaging 118.3 points per game. That's huge for Magnolia. They're known for the defense, and now they are doing so well in offense. So Meralco will really have their hands full, both ends of the floor. They have to bring their A game, and it's going to be a grind it out from game one all the way to probably a great game 5. So the bench contribution, the bench support of Meralco will be highly demanded in this matchup.
How about for Magnolia?
Meralco right now is averaging 14.3 offensive rebounds per game. It's the best in the league. And their second chance point, 16.5, which is second in the league. That's something that they addressed, and they beat Meralco with in the first match. But you know that you've got guys like Cliff Hodge, Chris Newsom. These guys get the boards, and they crash the board. So you have to be on your toes if you're Magnolia. But they really have to be able to fight for those rebounds. They shouldn't be complacent. I think some other X factors. Chris Newsom displayed well in the quarterfinals. He's the guy that we barely talked about in the eliminations. But then Chris Newsom is a different beast when he gets to the playoffs, and he did score 22.7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. It was an all-around performance, so that's a much-needed help that Tony Bishop will get. And the shooters will have to make their baskets because Chris Newsom and Tony Bishop, I assume, will really find and create that space for the shooters. So Alain Maliksi, Bong Quinto should start making those outside shots.
1B, stay where you are. We'll take a really quick break. Don't go just anywhere just yet. Our all-out preview of the PBA Governors Cup semifinals will continue after this really quick timeout. We still have with us today basketball analyst Juan Banal, and Juan and I have been talking about the semifinals of the PBA Governors Cup, which will start today. Earlier, we just touched up. We're done with the Magnolia Meralco Best of 5 semi-series. Let's go to the other side of the bracket, 1B. We've got the defending champions, the Barangay Ginebra on one end against the NLEX Road Warriors. First of all, grabe yung quarterfinals na yun, no? Yung performance ng Ginebra, 1B. Overcoming TNT's twice-to-beat advantage. And if we're gonna look back, how do you recap that, and how were they able to do that? Beat TNT not once, but twice.
Well, Coach Shot didn't sugarcoat it. He did say that, nagpapahamatay ka only to face Ginebra in the next round. And he knew the caliber that Ginebra was. I personally thought that TNT had an advantage in that matchup because of how healthy they were versus Ginebra's lineup. But then they just reminded everybody saying that, wait, aren't we the remaining champs in this conference? Don't we have the resident import Justin Brownlee that kind of put his stamp in this conference? And they did it in the best way possible. They did beat TNT in their own game. They were able to limit TNT in the first in the eliminations when they met each other was 56% from the field and scored 119. But in the quarterfinals, they couldn't get past 95 points, and they only shot 43% and 41% from the field. And in the eliminations, TNT was able to make 21 three-pointers. In that series, Ginebra was able to limit TNT to 6 in game 1 and 15 in the do-or-die matchup. So defensively, Ginebra got the job done. Also, at the same time, we talked about this when we had a preview of the quarterfinals, and we said, it's going to be a perimeter matchup. We did know that Christian Stanhardinger and Japet Aguilar will, lord over the shaded area. But we said that the Mikey Williams and the Jason Castro, the Pogoy, the Kib Montalvo, these are the matchups that LA, John Pinto, and Scotty Thompson had to face. But lo and behold, who stepped up? It was these guys. Scotty Thompson was almost averaging triple-double in that quarterfinals matchup. He had 23 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists in game 1, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists in game 2. LA had 7 points in the first game, but in game 2 he had 22 points. Nards Pinto really, he made the crucial baskets in game 1. So they really outplayed the guards of TNT, which needed to happen for them to win that matchup.
Well, NLEX naman did beat Ginebra during the elimination round. That was back in March 4. But, ito malaking but to. Yung import nila noon, si KJ McDaniels pa. And not to mention TNT blew out Ginebra naman nung elimination. Pero, look, wala na nga yung tropang giga, di ba? With those being said, 1B, which team has the edge now? If we're gonna take a look, nasa dito, NLEX with the tools they have, all things considered, without KJ McDaniels, with their new import, against Ginebra. Sino sa tingin mong llamado on paper?
Tough. Siyempre, on paper, it would be Ginebra right now. Just because of that KJ McDaniels issue. You know, it would have been a different conversation if they had KJ McDaniels. I think, you know, NLEX has already taken that huge step in terms of telling everybody na hindi lang kami pang quarterfinals. Pumapasok na rin kami. We're mature enough, we're ready enough to enter the semifinals. And they did this with a different kind of import, without KJ McDaniels. But then again, you're up against Ginebra. And, you know, they're so used to this stage. They're so used to this conference. Justin Brownlee has zero time to, you know, he doesn't need time to adjust. On the other hand, you have an import who's bagong-bago, nag-a-adjust pa.
Exactly.
And so that's a big deal for NLEX. But I mean, this is NLEX. With the addition of Justin Chua, you know, they have the fight in them. And if you take a look at that last matchup, NLEX outscored Ginebra's bench scoring. So NLEX had 48 points, Ginebra had 26. And I think it will really take the entire team, the entire squad of NLEX to step up. It's not going to be specific individuals. It was Kevin Alas, who was the best player. He had 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, close to a triple-double, but he was 8 out of 17. And so NLEX will really need to up that assist category in this matchup. Ginebra had more assists, but NLEX will have to really move the ball, play as a team. We know the Coach Yengao system naman, that everybody gets a fair chance of playing. So that's something that we expect. But to be able to create for their teammates, that's the important role. That the second unit will have to make Ginebra regret not going deep in this semifinals matchup.
You already touched up on the imports. Cameron Clark, Justin Brownlee. How does a first-timer in the PBA like Cameron Clark, replacing KJ McDaniels, how will he stack up against Justin Brownlee, resident import, knows Philippine basketball? Kumbaga, parang Pinoy na nga ito si Brownlee dahil feeling ko marunong na mag-Tagalog.
That's right.
So how will you compare these two imports, and how can Clark measure up to an established import like Brownlee here in the semis?
Well, see, Clark, for one, is and Coach Yengao was saying this. He said that in the quarterfinals, he was still nangangapa pa daw siya. He was trying to feel the game. But the good thing about him, he did play 42 minutes in 37 minutes. He is averaging 24.5 points and 12 rebounds per game. But the beauty of him adjusting to the system, he's a system player, and I think Coach Yang was quoted saying that. And NLEX plays that way. They're playing with flow. You know, KJ McDaniels was an outlier. You know, the ball would stop with him. He would create opportunities in offense for him. But the way NLEX really plays, it's very systematic. It's very motion dependent offense, right? And I think Cameron Clark fits in that system. He likes moving with the ball. He likes to play with his teammates. And I think the crucial part is how soon he can click well, the chemistry, if he's going to adopt to the Yengao system. So it's going to be difficult. I think NLEX, we cannot just spin it against the import, unlike how they performed in the eliminations. I think we're really going to have to look at the systemic growth of NLEX and how they're going to play against a well-oiled machine who probably has been playing for years already together itong Ginebra. Justin Brownlee, alam mo, kilala niya na siguro lahat ng anak ng mga players sa Ginebra. You know, he's that close to the team. He like you said, he's like a local already. So it's going to be tough. It's really going to be system versus system, familiarity versus familiarity.
Ninong na yata si Justin Brownlee sa mga
I wouldn't be surprised.
Sa mga Ginebra players, no? Kunin natin Ninong si Brownlee para dollar ibigay din. 1B, bago natin ituloy yung ating usapan, alam mo na kung anong oras. Alam mo na ba? It's time to find out the answer to our quiz question of the day. Akala ko sasabihin mo yun eh. Okay, this is the question I asked earlier, 1B, before the season started. The PBA last held the Governors Cup back in 2019, of course, pre-pandemic times. Which 4 teams made it to the semifinals of the conference? 1B, your time to shine.
I'll try. And I don't know. I'm not so
Yan ka sa
intelligent.
mga,
Guys. I'll
yan-
probably put Ginebra there. I'll probably put in Ginebra.
Ding, ding, ding. One.
Meralco will be there. San Miguel will be there. And then sino ba? TNT na siguro.
Tama. Pasok ka. Okay, tingnan natin. Correct answers are, well, you got Barangay Ginebra, which ended up, of course, winning the Governors Cup crown. They took on the Northport Batang Pier in the semis. Then you've also got the Meralco Bolts, which likewise advanced to the finals, and they faced TNT in the semis. So 3 of 4. Tama ba, Kal? 3 of 4, no? Oo, kasi SMU mali ka doon. Okay na. 75%. Pwede.
Pasangawa. Pwede na.
Your teachers will be proud, 1B. Okay. Kanina tinanong ko sa keys to winning, di ba, ng Magnolia and Meralco. Ito naman, dito sa NLEX Ginebra. Simulan natin with NLEX. Anong mga susi dapat they have to take note of if they want to beat Ginebra?
I think they have to push Ginebra out of their comfort zone. They are leading the league in assists, 25.9 per game. And so you know that they move the ball really well. NLEX will have to play those passing lanes. Sadly, without Jericho Cruz, right?
Yes.
He's probably one of those players that does that so well for NLEX. You know, he's the contrabida in NLEX. He's the tough guy. He kind of enforces himself. But they're gonna have to find that from somebody else. You know, JR Kenyan will have to do that. Guys like Chris Rosales, Kevin Alas will have to be the tougher players now because once Ginebra starts building momentum, that's going to be tough because now you have the crowd involved. And now that everyone's watching, it's harder, you know? And so Ginebra will have spurts of runs, and NLEX will have to counter that every single time. They have to make the right decisions to cut or to nip it in the bud, these runs of Ginebra, or else once they gain that momentum, there's no turning back. Once they get the whole crowd on their back, they will, you know, it's people, I think that it's a myth that, oh, really? The crowd has that kind of involvement and impact on the game? It does. That's for sure. Every single player will attest to that. So if they can manage that so well, so that you're bound to have those runs for Ginebra. If NLEX can manage that and really play those passing lanes well and create mini runs through fast breaks, then I think that can disrupt the Ginebra offense.
How about Ginebra?
Well, I think it's still defensive. They're right. They have to ride on their momentum against TNT. They did play good defense. NLEX, they're the third best in offense in the league. They're averaging 111 points and can put up as high as 115, and that's what they scored in their last matchup. They also can shoot well from the outside, which is 48%. So the upside of Ginebra is that they're looking at a similar style of play and stat line with their previous matchup against TNT. Ganun din naman ang stat line ng NLEX. And if they can ride on that momentum defensively, then I think Ginebra is bound to win this all.
Yun, you heard. Banal's Bits. Nag-iisip lang ako ng magandang pangalan mo, no? Joke lang yun. Natawa si Cal, executive producer natin. Okay, fearless forecast.
Revisit natin yan. Survey tayo.
Wag. Mali yun. 1B, fearless forecast. Which 2 teams do you see making it to the finals?
With all due respect to the other teams, because you always put me on the spot. But
we love doing that. Go.
Statistics-wise and probability-wise, I would go Magnolia being the top-seeded team in the eliminations, are playing well, and they're now, you know, in full strength, more or less. So I see them moving up to the finals. And then without actually Meralco, I think Meralco is going to really give them a hard time. And I would assume also Ginebra will move up the ladder, given that they are the reigning champs, they are the defending champs, and they know how it's played. Justin Brownlee is still the barometer for imports in this conference, and as long as he's still Justin Magic Brownlee, he will really create problems, and he can lead Ginebra to the finals.
Thank you, Juan B. As always, a pleasure having you on the show. Full show pag si Juan Banal ang kausap natin. We'll see you again soon, Juan B. Ingat ka. Stay safe. We just had basketball analyst Juan Banal, of course, discussing the PBA Governors Cup semifinals. It will